No! No! No!
Extravaganza.
What is up, all you ghosts out there? We got another special one for you today. This is the Horror Pop Extravaganza. It doesn't have a number in front of it because this is an interview episode that I've been chomping at the bit to do. I am super excited. You know, if you've listened to this thing for a while, my love for cinema and just movies in general goes back really far. You know, I think I was a product of the 80s. We were a bunch of latchkey kids. You know, TV raised us and we had some cool shit to watch. Now, I love my mom and dad. They did great. But, you know, we had a lot of cool things to watch. And for me, it was always practical effects. It was stunt performers. It was Jim Henson creating a world out of nothing. And, you know, it was magic behind the movies. And it's too often, I feel, not overlooked for someone like myself because I dive into this stuff, but the many, many components it takes to put a movie together. And then, you know, come up on 1978 and John Carpenter and Deborah Hill do a cool little thing. And they're like, hey, I want to make this movie, right? The Babysitter Murders. Well, nobody's claimed Halloween yet. Let's call it that. Fast forward a couple years, Sean Cunningham and these guys are like, hey, let's copy that. And Sean will tell you this. Sean will be the first one. You know, I've actually met Sean and talked to him and be like, and you see him in the interviews. Let's copy what they did and try and do it again. And so we had this little splatter film come out in 1980 that got critically panned. Everybody's like, it's trash, but everyone came out in droves. We were coming into this new era and everyone came out in droves to see this little thing called Friday the 13th. The hockey mask might be the most iconic item in horror cinema around. You don't ever have to even see a Friday the 13th movie to see that. Most people don't even know it goes with a goalie. Maybe if you're from Canada, you might know. You know, there's a lot of hockey up that way or up here in Michigan. But it's synonymous with Jason Voorhees. And for me, you know, my love started with that hockey mask. And the gentleman who I am sitting down with today, had the opportunity to don that hockey mask. And that is a huge responsibility. And we'll get there. We'll get there. But before we get there, I would really like to talk and introduce and just huge amount of thank you so freaking much. I'm humbled to be sitting here with the one and only Ken Kirzinger.
Thanks, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. And quickly, though, you come off some conventions recently, right?
Yeah. I was just out at Nightmare Weekend in Richmond and had a great time there. And on the way home, I got to stop off at Scarefest in Lexington, Kentucky. And that was just a great show. I mean, it is huge, the number of guests they have there. I was impressed walking around the floor, looking at those faces. So had a great time there and had a few other Jasons there as well. So that was great. I had a really good time.
I've met Kane and I think Ari at one time at a convention. And I love, you know, to your point, these things continue to grow. And you look at stuff like Horror Hound that just keeps getting bigger and, you know, all the stuff all around. And I really want just one convention with like, this is all Friday the 13th. Bring everybody in, you know, bring it all into one massive convention. If I could do it, somebody's got a whole bunch of extra money they want to let me borrow. I'll build one for you, Ken. I'll make that happen.
All right. That sounds like a great plan to me.
Yeah, so thank you for being here, man. Just out of this world. As I was looking through your IMDb, because at first I was like, wow, that's a lot of credits. It's like 130 some plus credits. So before we get there, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit with me and the people watching, you know, how did little Ken, I guess, were you ever a little Ken at 6'5"? I think you might stand, you know, pretty tall.
Actually, but my mother tells a story, or used to tell the story, about when I was born and when I came out, the doctor held me up and he said, "My God, look at the length of this child." Yes, I have always been big or tall anyway. I was pretty lanky growing up, but when I was a kid, you know what? I read an article about a stuntman named Hal Needham when I was like 12 years old. And up until then, I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau. But I always tacked that away in the back of my head, this famous stuntman, and thought, you know, stunt work would be something that would interest me. I loved film and television just like you. And When I got into university, I ended up hurting my knee playing football, and there was just a series of coincidences, really strange coincidences. So I had the idea of being looking into stunt work. My sister was living in Los Angeles. I decided after I injured my knee, I was going to go down there and finally look into being a stuntman. Total naive guy, no contacts, nothing, right? So first of all, I need plane fare. Well, it was 365 bucks I didn't have. I got my tax return. It was 365 bucks. I got on a plane. I took the bus to my sister's place, and meanwhile, on the way there, I'm seeing all these streets I saw growing up, and just thought they weren't real, in movies and stuff like that. And I got to my sister's place and find out that her next door neighbor was the property master on Fall Guy, the old TV series.
Right
So
on.
he hooks me up with a phone number for one of the stunt guys on the show. He hooks me up with a phone number for a guy named John Wardlow. They had started a group called Stunts Canada, and it was fairly new, and I should call them when I got back. Well, while I was in Los Angeles, I stopped at the Wax Museum, and there's Christopher Reeves in a phone booth, and people had always told me that I looked a little like Christopher Reeves. So I get a picture of that. I go back to Vancouver. I call up John Wardlow, and I spend 2 hours talking to him. Bottom line, I start training with the group, and my first stunt job is Superman 3 in Calgary, Alberta. So I go out there, and they're going, "Hey, you would have been a great double for Christopher Reeves," but I didn't get to double.
Right, because
He
he
was
was,
so
he was he was very tall too, wasn't he? He was a pretty
Oh
tall.
yeah. Chris was pretty much my height, yeah, and
You would have
a
been.
little better looking, a little better looking. Um, and anyway, so I ended up doubling Christopher Reeves a couple times over the years, and I ended up with Jason in the same wax museum.
Really? That's
Yeah.
amazing, man. That is amazing. So you mentioned, I'm interested, Stunt Canada. What was there like a facility where you trained, or how did you guys develop like, hey, what does that even look like to be the process, I guess, for being a stunt person? Like, do you just start falling on your ass and hope you don't get hurt? Or, how did that go?
You start falling on your ass, but it's for money.
Right. Okay.
No, when I was still in university when I came back from Los Angeles, and so I met up with the handful of stunt guys that were. I don't think anybody was actually making a full-time living doing stunt work at the time. Everybody kind of had side jobs, but we all had this passion for wanting to be stuntmen and wanting to make movies, and we just all loved it. So as a student at UBC, I had access to the gym there. I could sign in for it, and I could check out a video camera, which back then individuals didn't have video cameras.
Right.
Nobody owned a video camera, so I could get access to the video camera, and we could rehearse doing stunt fights. We could learn better air sense on the trampolines. We could pretend to do gun hits or get the shot. Uh, so we could, we started to practice and rehearse in there. And then what really kicked it off was Stephen J. Cannell ended up coming up to Vancouver with Jump Street and Wise Guy and Hat Squad and Broken Badges, The Commish. And all of a sudden, boom, there was a whole lot of stunt work to go in Vancouver, and not quite enough stunt people. And so we always had American stuntmen coming up, and we learned a lot from them, especially about car work and stuff that we hadn't had a lot of experience with yet. And but when Cannell came in, all of a sudden we needed more stunt guys, and it just grew and grew from there. Vancouver got a reputation for a place you could go make movies cheap and 75 cents on the dollar. I don't think there were any tax credits back then, but I just saw the industry growing here, and boom, it took off.
Yeah, like it still kind of is now, even in Toronto and stuff. I see a bunch of really cool things coming out of, and I want to get back over your way. I've been up that way a little bit, been to Victoria, and then when I was in the military, and it's beautiful up there, man. Where you
That's
guys
where I grew up.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I grew up in Victoria.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
beautiful
bebopped around.
place.
Oh, gorgeous, gorgeous.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you talk about, movie making and stuff that happened there with like the Goonies and Short Circuit and stuff that was going on. And I remember getting up there and telling the cab driver, like, hey, can you show me the Goonies house? Like, I don't care how much money it costs. Will you please just take me around and show me all this shit? And he was super cool about it.
Yeah.
But coincidence. So you're starting to do the stunt thing. When does it become real? Like, this is my real job. Like, this is what I'm going to do for the next foreseeable future is I'm going to throw myself around and get paid good money to do it.
Well, when the business took off here, up until then the work was pretty spotty, right? So, but when Cannell came in, and then we had other projects coming in as well that started to come in after Cannell. There was just no doubt in my mind. I mean, I was making more money than I'd ever seen. I was working on 2, 3 shows sometimes in a day, and it was crazy. And I was literally living my dream of being a stuntman. We all wanted to be Hooper back then, and we really embraced that lifestyle, I gotta say. I can tell you a lot of good stories that still might get me arrested.
I was reading in Scream magazine recently. It was a little expose on Jaws 3, and they were talking to the cast, and they said almost every minute of that footage, everyone is high on cocaine. They're like the entirety of the movie. They're like it was snowing in Miami, and there is so yeah. I can't imagine some of the wild times. Um, so you start doing this, and there's a couple. Again, I was looking. You've been on some like War. I was looking at with Jet Li and Jason Statham. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
it's amazing, and all these little projects. But a couple I really wanted to talk about because I don't want to say I could sit here and talk to you all day, and I probably would. But Happy Gilmore.
Yeah.
So yes, Happy Gilmore. When Happy Gilmore comes around, there's a lot of Adam Sandler is known for the weird, quirky, kind of wild stunts. Where do you remember, any of the details around like kind of where you fell into Happy Gilmore?
Oh, well, so it was being coordinated. The stunt coordinator was a good friend of mine, Brent Woolsey, and Brent is a cowboy, and a famous line was he had a stunt guy on the hood of a car, and the car had to spin around backwards, and the first time he tried it, the guy flew off, and so instead of putting a strap in or something like that, Brent just yells at the guy, "Hang on harder, Gus."
No other measure.
And they got it done. But and Guy Buse was actually the stunt double for Adam Sandler on that
Oh,
show.
I got you. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they were good. They were good friends, two cowboys, just rough and tumble guys. And the stunts on the show. I mean, the car hit was probably harder than it had to be because you got the cowboys and Adam Sandler loved it.
Right.
The fight scene was hilarious. Between
Bob Barker and
Bob
Sandler. Yeah.
Barker
Okay.
and who is doubled by Tom Glass, did a great job of doubling him. And yeah, the tower scene at the end, the car hits the tower.
Yes. Yes.
And it's a camera platform. There's all kinds of people in it and stuff like that. It's going down. Well, so that tower was quite tall, and I think we did 3 takes, and 2 out of the 3 takes, people went to hospital. So yeah,
I mean, it was a big, and that's my heart will always love practical. I always love a practical effect over and there's a place for visual effects. I think, it's cool, but your mind, there's a veil that will always be there. And even though, I go back, I say the first horror movie I ever saw was The Dark Crystal by Jim Henson because it scared the shit out of me at like 5 years old. But that whole world is still so tangible, it was released in 82, but everything was real and touchable. And that tower was real. I just watched Happy Gilmore again with my kid the other night, my 14-year-old son, him for the first time, and he's laughing his ass off. It still holds up the test of time. It was super good.
It's a great sequence. Yeah.
Yeah, so much of it is good. And I'm going to backtrack a little bit because you had mentioned, stunt coordinator, and I saw on your IMDb as well that is a position you've held, it looks like numerous times.
Sure.
How about Jason Takes Manhattan, Friday the 3rd, Part 8, 19, I don't know when it was shooting, 88, maybe. Those were fast back then. They were putting out movies real quick in that franchise, but I know released 89. Yeah. Jason takes his boat ride to Manhattan and you did the stunt. My wife's favorite of the entire series. She loves that.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Loves
cool.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I was actually the stunt coordinator, the stunt double for Kane, and the fry cook he kills in the diner.
Shut up. Really? That's
Yeah.
badass, dude.
So
That's
you got to go back and look at when
I
he
will now,
bursts into the diner.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Which is weird for you guys because your kind of job is to stay hidden. You know?
Well, I was talking about that this weekend with Tom Morga. You know, Tom Morga is an old
Mhm.
stunt guy, and he's, you know how much what he's done. And back in the day, we were sort of there was a kind of a code where you didn't say that you had doubled people, and it was to create the illusion that the actor was doing more than they were. And
Sure.
but the veil gets ripped away. Everybody knows that's not true anymore, and it's really cool that actors are giving more recognition to stunt guys. And Fall Guy was just such a the movie that came out
So good.
recently.
So good.
Of course,
Yeah.
I actually worked on an episode of Fall Guy that they brought to Vancouver years and years ago as a special skills extra. So basically, I was in a car that the stunt guys were driving around
Oh, right
before
on.
they rolled it, kind of thing. And I had a Fall Guy T-shirt that the guys gave me, and somebody stole it a long time ago. But anyway, that it's great nostalgia and a great homage to all the stunt guys, and of course directed by a stuntman, and so that was great to see.
Yeah.
Still no Academy Awards for stunt people though.
Which I don't know why, especially in some of the stuff, people are expected now. Like we've taken, you got George Miller doing things in the desert with just let's ride around with 100 people on poles flapping back and forth, filming
Yeah,
new Mad Max thing, which
yeah,
looks amazing though. Like even though there's CGI all around it, you can see this
yeah.
stuff. And yes,
Great visuals, yeah.
there
Well,
needs
I
to be
mean,
more
I'm
critical.
like you. I love live action. I love practical, but I also love the blend of the two when you have to. When they did Jurassic Park, right? They were talking about should we CG the dinosaurs or should we puppet them? And they blended it, and that's how art evolves. And so if you know your stuff, you do it right. I think combining the two is can be awesome.
And I'm with you there. I think it is, but it's got to be, it almost seems that there's a lot of instances, and I can't speak for anybody putting movies together, but it's like, oh, we'll get to that in post, or the thought isn't there to begin with. And again, we're seeing it in the Marvel movies, some of this de-aging of the face and stuff is already looking pretty
Right.
rough around the edges, for the most part. Like that stuff is going to age out, whereas a mask, or a glove with some knives on it. I've not been watching horror movies all Halloween season. I mean, it's
Yeah.
been fun. And I got to see Nightmare at the drive-in, and that was cool. The first time I ever went to the drive-in, my wife took me in her hometown of Warren, Ohio, and we got to see the original Nightmare on Elm Street. But there's
Yeah.
something there, they built a whole room, flipped it upside down, and then started squirting blood out everywhere.
Oh,
We
wow.
get, a little bit more into the future. And we do get these blends, but I think when there's an over reliance on it, it just loses
Yeah.
the emotion, or the
Yeah.
connection. I think there's something that is severed in the connection with the audience. And so, yeah, seeing stunt people being recognized, I'm very excited about it. And just in general, hopefully you'll start getting some Academy Award places. That'd be
My day may be past, but yeah,
yeah,
I hope they got. I heard an interesting rumor that they thought if they gave stunt people an Academy Award, that more stunt people might get killed because of it, because they'd be trying to
they'd
do
be
more and more dangerous stuff. And I just I hope that they would think that stunt people are smarter than that.
right, right. They're not just driving off cliffs. Like this is going to be
Yeah,
it. Winning my award this time.
yeah.
Um, okay, so in the essence of time, I would like to talk about leading up to, so what was, I guess, your relationship with the Jason Voorhees character before, I would guess, meeting with Ronnie or whoever, kind of
Well,
brought you on for that. But had you seen the movies? Were you a fan at all, or was it just like,
yeah, I mean, I had watched them as they sort of came out, maybe not in the theaters, but I had rented them and stuff like that.
Sure.
And of course, worked on number 8, so I got pretty familiar with it. I got to
Yeah.
wear the costume, and then I was being interviewed for the stunt coordinating job for Freddy versus Jason, and I was having a conversation with the line producer, and then he asked me if I would audition to play Jason. He said that they were looking for somebody bigger, and that I fit their physical, what they were looking for physically, and I had some past experience with the franchise.
Sure.
So they auditioned me, which was a close up. I gave me a cheap white Jason mask and did a close up of my eyes as they read the opening scene of the girl swimming naked in the lake in the opening. And then they had me walk around the room, and I guess they showed that to Ronnie, and then I met with Ronnie, and I got the job. But when he asked me to audition, the first thing I said was, "Well, what about Kane?" And he just said, "Well, the old line, they want to go in a different direction. They want somebody bigger." So
Yeah, and that's, fair. I'm a not only horror movies, but comic books. I'm a big comic book fan. I've read everything from the golden age to present. And there's different iterations of characters, and that's okay. I feel like as fans, sometimes people get a little too aggressive of like, this is the only Jason, or this is the only, this is the only that. Where in some cases, I do feel like, yeah, it's kind of hard to separate, Chucky's voice from Brad Dourif. That's a very difficult thing.
yeah,
To separate Freddy Krueger from Robert is extraordinary. They tried and but
yeah,
that's with a voice. But with these, characters and stuff, there's so many different versions and they're all cool in their own way. And I rewatched Freddy versus Jason, one I've seen many times this morning when I was sitting there working on some art. And so coming from my perspective, this movie was such a big deal, huge in the world of horror movies, because I was that kid when that glove came up at the end of Jason Goes to Hell
yeah.
and takes the mask, and we're like, holy shit, this is back to the golden age of Universal. You're like, who's better, the Wolfman or Frankenstein? Well, Wolfman, who's the best? And now
Totally.
we're finally gonna see it, because we've been arguing about this on the playground since we were old enough to see, well, too young to see the movies, but as kids we were, who would win in this fight? So it gets announced, Freddy versus Jason. For me,
Yeah.
like, this is it, dude. This is it. This is gonna be awesome. Movie comes out. Really, I mean, in my opinion, everyone I talk to really likes the movie, and I feel like it's still like there's those people that are always going to be like, well, it came in red, it's not this or that. Okay, everyone is entitled to their opinion.
Haters gonna hate.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. But this thing comes out. I'm in the theater day one. I don't even know if we were doing midnight previews. I feel like now it's gotten to like 7 p.m. or even 5 p.m. on a Thursday. You can catch, but it used to be midnight. But I know I was there on Friday. Saw the thing, went out. I want to say saw it at least once more in the theater, if not a couple more times. And then I've watched it many, many, many times ever since.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so much of that is your portrayal as Jason. And I love that rewatching it today. And the older we get, I think new eyes, we get perspective on things. You got to do so many things that no other Jason got to do. You're
Yeah.
the only
I
one to
mean,
really look. I mean, and with Betsy, like you're the only Jason that really got to look at his mother.
it was you finally got to sort of go deeper into Jason's emotions,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and how that's portrayed through the body language of Jason through the course of the movie and stuff like that. I mean, I don't want to overanalyze what I did or anything
Yeah,
like
sure.
that.
No, but please do. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, after all these years and all the questions and all the conversations, I find I go deeper into it than I probably did at the time, for sure. But no, I mean, it was a different portrayal of Jason where he is actually he comes out as a sympathetic character. He almost comes out as the hero. I mean, you've got the heroine for sure, but Jason, most people sort of come to me and they say, "Yeah, you were going up against a pedophile." I mean, that
Right.
kind of hate is just so much larger than a few, measly murders here and there,
Right.
for
Right.
probably good reasons. And anyway, so it was interesting to see how people reacted to my Jason and versus all the other Jasons that came. I mean, 9 guys have played Jason, and then you got the stunt doubles and the you
Right.
know stuff like that. So Jason is definitely at the core of all this, and how he's portrayed by each of us brings something to the audience. I feel confident we did well with Freddy versus Jason because, you know, it was #1 in the box office for 2 weekends in a row. I mean, and now you've got Terrifier. I think is up there, and it goes to what you were talking about before about this sort of nostalgia for a time where you could be scared. You had to go to the theater to be scared, and it wasn't outside the theater, you know, because it's crazy times, and so that nostalgia, that sort of feeling safe in a horror movie, watching a horror movie these days is kind of a sign of the times.
It really is. And that's an old school thing. You know, you look at the World War II era and all of the big war eras always correspond to a bump in horror ticket sales because people do want that escapism. They want the ability to be afraid, but from a safe distance. And I've seen Terrifier 3, and I mean, I like all three of them. I threw some money when he kickstarted the second one, or Indiegogo'd. I was like, dude, I support what you are doing. Please keep doing what you're doing because this is amazing. You know, to see a new slasher come up, but then also see somebody who you can tell, even just with his cameos in that movie, you know, to see Tom Savini pop up. This is a guy who loves practical effects, and Damien, I think, cut his teeth on practical effects, and it's amazing. But so back to Jason, you talk about the kills in Freddy versus Jason. These are awesome. These are, you know, my favorite when I did get to meet Kane, I told him my favorite was in Jason X when he puts a girl's head in the liquid nitrogen and smashes it on the.
I know. I actually we did a panel together, and I actually brought that up. Yeah, and it's funny. It was on TV just the other day. Two of the actresses on that in that used to do Andromeda, a TV sci-fi series here in Vancouver called Andromeda. The dark-haired woman at the beginning who gets frozen, and the woman that plays the robot. I'm sorry, I can't remember their names now, but it was fun to see them working. And that kill in particular, I brought it up myself on.
But one of my second favorites is when you fold my man's in half in the in the opening sequence.
It is the way they cut that together. You know, you don't know what's happening until it happens, right? Because, you know, his one hand goes here, clamp, clamp, or the first of all, the sword goes in the floor, clamp, clamp, smash, and he's in half. No, I always tell people that's my favorite kill too, because everybody expected the stabbing, but nobody expected the folding bed. That was brilliant.
Right. And, you know, the stabbing goes all the way back to the original film. But in this one, you see it in the bottom and you're like, oh, that's brutal. But then we flip up, camera jumps up real fast and you're like, holy shit, he sandwiched him completely in half.
Yeah, it's okay to borrow. I mean, that's what people look for, these nods and stuff like that, and then make it better, you know, make it better.
And that's what I say, you know, take a good idea, you know, put your spin on it, or take a great idea that was executed badly and recreate that great idea, because there have been some. So you get to chase these kids around. Like you said, Jason is so much more sympathetic. And I don't think you're reaching too far there, because we see him, you know, almost as the damsel in distress as he's drowning. You know, Freddy's got him in this nightmare world. He's been manipulated. That never feels good. Nobody likes to be manipulated. And if somebody pretends to be your mom, that's like the most fucked up manipulation you could do, is be like, oh, I'm going to pretend to be your mother. That's no, man, you just don't do that. But we see him, you know, in the water, and then the flashbacks where we've got, you know, all the kids. I should have been watching you, should have been doing this or that. But him drowning, and then I like the sequences in the hospital as well. Like, there was a good amount of money that went into this. You can see the production budget.
Oh yeah,
all over this thing, and I'm so happy for that, because it's still, you know, we get a little CGI with the little worm guy that smokes some weed with our buddy, but by the time you're in and you look great. The like dark under, were you like, it's like a shiny. Where did that kind of come from? Was that all?
Oh, that was the spray. You know, they texture the skin with the air spray paint. That's what I'm trying to say. It's just that texture is all painted on. It's a pretty flat skin, and then they paint that sort of modeling on, and of course the hair and stuff like that. But the shape of the head, you know, was just classic.
It was.
I tell this story.
Go ahead, please.
So I just worked with Bryan Singer, well-known director. I think might have been on an X-Men. I was on the show. We were out at Bunsen Lake, an hour and a half, 2 hour drive outside Vancouver. 3 o'clock in the morning, I get this message on the radio. Hey, Ken, Brian Singer's here. He wants to say hi. And I'm going, Brian Singer, the director. And they go, yeah. I go, that's weird. Anyway, I wasn't in costume, right? So I walk out, and here's Brian Singer with a small group of people, 3, 4 people. And you could just see the disappointment that I wasn't wearing the costume, right? That's what they came. They came to see Jason, right? They came to see Jason. And so I said, hang on. I went back to the trailer. I threw on the costume and looked outside, and I could see they weren't paying attention. So I snuck out of my trailer and I walked around behind them and in full character, machete and everything. I walked up behind them, and they turned around at the last second. One of them screamed like a little girl. It was just like, oh, my God. And they all spun around, and I just stood there while they walked around me, and they go, oh, this is amazing. I love this jacket. This burlap is fantastic. The hair, look at that. And so anyway, some people really like the way that Jason looked.
It looks amazing, and it does. Like, you're right, the whole outfit is good, and I feel it's the best in the cornfield when you first come out, before this is a rave, not a fucking whatever, and they're yelling at you, and douse you in moonshine or whatever. Were you on fire, or was that somebody else who was on fire in that?
That was the only stunt I asked to do on the show, because I knew it would get nominated for a World Stuntman Award. And they told me, no, Ken, we've cast you as the actor. You're going to have a stunt double. And so that was Glenn Ennis. And that was actually 8 full burns. He couldn't see. They had a earbud in his hair. They straight, turn right. But like 8 full burns. And it lost out. It did get nominated for a World Stuntman Award, and it lost out to Last Samurai, which was a combination of smaller burns with CGI big burns.
Right.
And, so Glenn, I feel for you. You should have won, bud. And I wish I had done it.
Yeah, because that's a cool sequence too. It is, just to see the kind of that bird's eye view you get at one point, and you just see this trail of. You mentioned Jurassic Park, and it reminds me of when the raptors are coming in from every angle, and you get this cool bird's eye. But this is a bird's eye of Jason Voorhees on fire, walking through and chucking machetes through people. Right. And it's not long after, though, and what I've been the most excited to talk about is once we actually meet face to face. So you've been resurrected by almost some of the grossest mouth to mouth maybe ever captured on. So I imagine, did you have like a mouthful of water that you just had to?
Well, okay. So the true story is that Ronnie came up to me just before we did the shot, and he said, "Put some water in your mouth, and when she lifts the mask up, gurgle it out." And we never told her, and she would freak out. Seeing me in costume on set, like she did not want to be around me when I was in costume. So that was the only day that I had full prosthetic makeup and stuff like that. She tips the basket, I gurgle it out. That's Kelly Rowland's honest reaction to a rotting man gurgling water. That's what she would really do.
And it was captured beautifully. Like, it's so good that, because you're right, you see it on her just like, I feel like she does a little choky kind of thing. But so we take you back home to Camp Crystal Lake. Where the idea is, we've learned in the Nightmare on Elm Street mythos, you can bring Freddy out and you can bring him into the real world. That's a very doable thing. So the only chance we have is to pit him off against this other guy after you had been used to bring Freddy's memory back and all this. Yeah. And the first time we see you guys is in this amazing, like, burning building, I think is where we start in the cabin. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of walking through, I know you've probably told this story so much, but you're making this little guy's heart so happy telling me, sir, because it's a beautiful thing.
It was the whole concept of bringing the construction site into that location and everything was brilliant, because it just gave us so many more toys to play with and stuff. But so the sequence starts with, Jason arriving, and, Freddy's inside the cabin, and he's got the girl, the heroine, and boom, Jason busts through the wall, big entrance. And
get the music,
arrives to save the damsel essentially, but that wasn't in his mind. That wasn't part of his plan. He just wants to get Freddy.
Right.
So this is the payback for what happened to Jason in the Freddy's world. Now you're in my world, bitch.
Right.
And Jason, of course, sets to work chucking them against the wall. He runs them through the windows, down through the windows, which was a great sequence. I thought we did that in one. I had the stunt guy, Doug Chapman, was doubling Robert Englund. He was on picked at the hips, so I could I didn't have to carry his weight. I just had to move it. And so that just looks like a freight train going through those windows. That just turned out really, really well. And then, of course, the building has caught on fire. And I have to say, Robert was just as game could be. The inside of that room was so hot because the heat goes up and it was a covered roof. So then it starts to come down again. And the wigs on the stunt doubles were actually starting to wilt from the heat. And I could feel it on because it soaks into the headpiece, and you can start feeling that heat as well. And Robert, of course, is feeling the same thing. Now I'm a little closer to the roof than him, but anyway, he kind of trusted me, and he trusted the stunt guys, and so we had a blast doing that sequence in that room, and it was just such a great set piece and stuff. And so then I haul him out the door. And I throw them an impossible distance through another cabin roof or whatever, and then the roof of the cabin collapsed. And when it collapsed, it actually hit me in the head.
Oh,
but luckily not. But luckily not too hard. But it definitely knocked my head back. Right, and then we moved to as I remember, we moved to the construction site area, and Freddy's launching the torpedoes, and there's that big ratchet that Glenn did for me there too. And then the sequence with Freddy on the cement bin that was swinging.
and smashing in.
Everybody always asks me to say, what's your favorite scene in the movie? And it was definitely the battle. It was what everybody came for. I mean, I could go on and on. But it's just watched again.
Yeah, and absolutely. I tell everyone that. I'm like, watch. Yeah. And you're right, though, and for me, I see a lot of, Eastern, Shaw Brothers, wire work type influence. What's going on with Freddy? And you see the martial arts influence is so heavy. And people were like, oh, well, Freddy could never learn jujitsu. I'm like, have you never seen part 4? Like, he had karate against her. He can take all the souls, have whatever he wants. Like, don't worry about it. This is awesome. We get this.
Well, that is thanks to Ronnie Yu. That's the flavoring that Ronnie Yu brought to Freddy versus Jason. Like, what an odd pairing, a Hong Kong director with two, American classic iconic horror figures. And he was very aware of, what the fans are used to, but he added that pinch of this and a pinch of that, and he stirred it up. And I thought he walked a very good line with where it looked a little martial arty,
Yeah.
But that was because one of the big questions going in was, well, from the fans was, well, how's Freddy ever going to beat up Jason? I mean, Jason's so much bigger than him, and he doesn't stand a chance. Well, I mean, Ronnie Yu's a martial artist, and he knows that a smaller man can take on a bigger man and whoop his ass if he knows how to fight. So he walked a fine line there. We walked a fine line with everything because you got two, Elm Street franchise and the Friday the 13th franchise to satisfy. And so everything was walking. I think they went through 10 iterations of scripts before they settled on the one that we ended up making. Probably
just like you said, to ensure, because it's such a fine line, because the camps on both of those sides. I mean, you've met a lot of these individuals, myself included. We are here for the whole ride, like for all of it. And it's like, oh, this was my thing. Now I've gotten to a point in life where I'm like, I just love all of it, dude. I want to meet all the effects people. I want to meet the stunt people. I just everybody. I just want to say thank you for making, my life that much cooler. You were part of my life being cooler. And, but privileged to do it. Oh, dude. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the end of this, which we're getting a little closer. But, you talk about Ronnie's flavor. One of my favorite images from any of these franchises is Freddy coming up out of that water slow with the red, like almost devil face. And that's I was like really started to see it because I was fresh out of high school when this first came out. So I wasn't really analyzing film. I was like, yo, you guys want to watch something crazy? Let's watch Texas Chainsaw 2. That'll be fun.
Right.
But now I'm looking at it and you're right. It's like all these elements somehow came together to make this thing that works. You know, I've watched it with my kids. They know Freddy versus Jason. And I think everyone around the world knows Freddy versus Jason. And I think I even recall when it came out, posters, you know, and there were promos
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
cards. Yeah, they
Yeah.
had cool fight cards and stuff like that.
Well, did you know about the thing we did in Las Vegas? So we did a big promo thing in Las Vegas where they introduced Robert and I like two prize fighters, and they brought Michael Buffer in and to do it, and you know they had security to watch over me and all this stuff, and you know Robert got to shit talk his ass off on stage, you
Right,
know, ad
right.
libbing and everything, and you know it was fantastic. It was like these between that and the first time I ever got to see the movie, which was in an open field with 2,000 fans with Robert in Texas, you know, we knew we had, you know, had something special. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's still all these years later is still, I think, by most
Yeah.
fans, like everyone I talk to, it's, you know, I love this thing. And being now, you know, a tattoo artist, I've had the opportunity to tattoo Jason quite a few times, quite a few times. And actually one of yours was one of them that I got to do. And my guy was really
Oh,
excited. He's like, that's my favorite. I want this one. So we ended up doing a silhouette with a mask and it turned out really, really.
oh, well, you know what? I just had this idea I've had an idea for a while. I got this old 1988 convertible Corvette, and I've often thought about, you know, getting it all fixed up, and it's white with red leather interior. And I thought about, you know, I should get some artwork, like, you know, a Jason mask from Freddy versus, you know, with the claw marks and everything, and get that on the
Yes.
hood. And then around it, what I'd like to do, because you know, when I see fans with amazing tattoos of, you know, I remember when not long after the movie, 5 years after the movie came out, a guy showed me a full back tattoo, Freddy, Jason on either side, Freddy versus Jason. I
Right.
shit you not, full back tattoo. I can't remember if I have a picture of that somewhere or whatever, but over the years I've taken pictures of fans' tattoos and stuff like that, and I thought it'd be cool to get uh, those put on the car, you know, copied and spray, you know, have
Find
the
a way
artwork done
to,
on
yeah,
the
yeah,
car.
yeah. Almost like a
Anyway,
wrap.
it's
Just wrap
it's
the
crossed my
cover.
mind to do that because it blows my mind that, you know, that people are loving this movie after all these years, and
Yeah.
and displaying it on their own skin. I mean, that says so much, right? I
It's
mean,
it because and I think you admit, unlike any of the other horror icons, I always say the big four. You had Michael, Jason, Freddy, and Leatherface. Like Leatherface
right,
has been there for me. I love because I
right,
think I could write a paper on Leatherface, how he was just
right.
misunderstood. You know what I mean? Put him in a good
Yeah,
environment, he probably would have been okay. But of all of them, Jason represents this almost primordial evil, but at the same time, it doesn't come off nefarious. It's like he's there almost doing a job in response to the environment around him, not necessarily just wandering, murdering everywhere. And I feel like people can relate to that almost like metaphysical evil that Jason somehow represents. And there's a connection that can be made, even with kids, little kids. I mean, my own daughter, she had, so when I met Ari Lehman, when I
yeah,
decided to tattoo, I had a big collection of action figures and comic books, and I sold them all off so I could support my
right.
family while I was transitioning into a new thing. But she kept all my Jason figures, and she had a little backpack, and she'd carry them all around at 2 years old, and she'd say, "My sweet Jason, my sweet Jason." And then so Ari signed a picture to Annabelle from "Your Sweet Jason," and then he's like, "That's the first time I've ever been asked to write that," and I'm like, "That's awesome, dude." But Jason, he is, I feel, timeless in so many ways. You know, he's become almost like the Frankenstein monster, to where it's just bigger than any one of you or any, you know, anyone behind it. It's become so
Right.
much bigger and such a part of the zeitgeist that it's kind of unbelievable. Like you probably have Mickey Mouse and then Jason Voorhees, as far as recognizability, you know,
Right.
a global, right? Maybe
The
Ralph
mask. Let
McDonald.
me can I just tell you an interesting story, a quick story about the mask.
No, please do it.
When I was growing up, one of my best friends was a guy named Pat O'Neill, who's now the equipment manager for the Vancouver Canucks, has been for over 30 years. Anyway, his dad used to make those type of masks for hockey players. he would take a mold of their face, and then he would make that type of mask for the goalies. So I always found that kind of interesting.
That's
I
awesome. Yeah.
experienced that as a preteen. Yeah.
And then it comes full circle, man, and you get to put it on. And now, so a little bit about the convention life. Like, if anybody's looking for you, is there anything coming up soon, or just or anywhere they may be able to connect with
No,
you?
not. I'm pretty much done for North America. I've got one I'm looking forward to in Dortmund, Germany in December, and apparently Robert's supposed to be there. So it's always nice to get together with him and Nancy, his wife, who took me under their wings after the movie came out. We were traveling around promoting it and doing some conventions overseas. Very fond memories of that. So I look forward to see them.
That's awesome, man. And we're going to keep our eyes open for you around this way. And definitely, I know if I see you coming anywhere soon, because I try to make the big ones in Michigan. It's hard, and because it gets expensive traveling conventions. But Detroit,
Yeah.
really like, Motor City. Astronomicon has been a really cool one that goes on in Michigan. And then Motor City Nightmares is always fun. Heather Camp was, I think, just recently at Motor City Nightmares, where I saw her do a panel, and it was just so much fun, man.
Yeah.
She's so sweet, and it's my wife's favorite franchise, so I got her a picture signed.
Right.
She's just
Yeah.
all over the walls and stuff like that. And
No, I'm lucky. I've gotten to spend time at conventions with her a couple of times. She's a real sweetheart.
yeah, she's I mean, everybody around the movies, and like you said, I hope this continues to grow, because you can't, and it's almost, I remember Freddy being big in the 90s, but now more than ever, there's everything you can find. There's a lunch pail or this or that, and people are like really proud of their horror t-shirt. Like, oh, look at my cool new Friday t-shirt.
And you know what I like to see though too is there's a lot of families who are coming out together, and it's a generational thing, a bonding thing, something they can do together. And it's not just a lot of loners showing up hoping they're going to meet somebody who they can have a connection with, right? But there's that too, right? So it's great because everybody there automatically has something in common, and people are so friendly to each other, and it's a great community.
I'll have to send you a picture. My wife and I, when Annabelle was 2, I told her I was going to be talking to you. I said, I'm talking to Jason. And this, like, to your point, no joke. This is what she said, Ken, and please forgive my 5-year-old. She's like, will he have the mask on? Can I say hi? And he's like, if he doesn't have the mask on. So anyway, Halloween, 2 years old. My wife is dressed as Freddy, just with the sweater, glove, and hat. I've got the full Michael Myers on. I've got a couple different masks. And Annabelle wanted to be Jason Voorhees. She's got a little foam machete. I got her tiny little coveralls and a little foam mask. The entire trick-or-treating, she never took the mask off. When we said, aren't you hot? She said, no, because then they'll know I'm not Jason. She said, I have to keep the mask on because then they'll know I'm not Jason. But I got some pretty good pictures of her, just this little tiny blonde thing standing there with her.
Yeah, I can just picture that because inevitably at these conventions, I see, tiny little kids dressed as Jason, and it just blows my mind, and they're so cute. I can totally picture that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So thank you for all of that. I appreciate that kind of little dive into your history there. We're going to shift gears just for a second here, because at the end of this podcast, we always do a mindfulness segment. And this was born out of just kind of my own struggles. I think a lot of us, we are all collectively struggling, but have a hard time talking about it with each other. And I think the more we kind of just talk about things, but this is going to be a good one, because I knew what I was going to bring to the table today. And I kind of already let the cat out of the bag a little bit earlier. You never know. And this goes for all of us. We never know. None of us ever know when you might be a part of somebody's dream coming true. You never know when you might be a piece of that, and it could be something so simple as somebody's at the store and you happen to be the cashier and they're buying the pregnancy test that lets them know they're going to be, there. They might remember that moment, that hope that they had at the cashier, but you might never even know that stuff. It doesn't have to be huge. Our acts don't have to be huge. But anything that we're doing could be a part of somebody's dream coming true. And, Ken, you taking the time to talk to me today is a part of my dream coming true. as a child with posters on my walls of Jason and Mikey and all these things. You know, I dreamed of a day like I didn't even think this would ever be possible, and it's been unreal. And we all have that capacity within us, and you know, you just taking the time out of your day. For you, I'm sure you've done a lot of conversations like these, you know, but you've been smiling the whole time, you've been present, you've been sitting here looking me in the eyes, we've been joking, we've been having a good time. You gave your time to me, and to me, time is the most valuable resource we have. And so you got to be a part of my dream coming true, man. And I just want to let everybody know, and everyone listening, that we can all be part of somebody's dream coming true with just, I call them random acts of kindness. Just do a random act of kindness. It could be at the grocery store, it could be anywhere, but you never know. The smallest thing can have the biggest difference in the world. And, you know, you and I have never met. We spoke a little bit via email, but your presence has helped to drive my entire creative career, which it took me 38 years to land as an artist, where I feel like I kind of needed to be the whole time. And I'm not mad about anything I did up until that point. But you are such an instrumental part of how I create. And probably not just me. There's so many people that you've been a part of, that you've met at conventions, or that you've done little interviews with, you know, and talked to. I'm sure you've done interviews right at your convention tables and just sat there, you know, you get to chatting with people. I've been there with some of my heroes that I continue to find. So thank you. And just know, you know, you're a part of some cool stuff happening, man. And part of, you know, not just me, I know it's so many people out there who are like, that is my Jason Voorhees. And you're this it's like, if you were to build the house of horror, you're a foundational block. You're like a cornerstone, you know, the pillar of Jason that holds the whole thing together, that kind of has influenced cinema for years and years to come. And dude, I just want to say thank you. And that's another thing. Just say thank you. Just say thank you to each other, and look each other in the eyes and just say, you know what, whatever, or maybe how can I help your dream come true? That's an even bigger one. You know, if you got the time, if you could ask somebody, you know, how can I help your dream come true? Which is tricky, but yeah, man, you got anything you'd like to add to that, please?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've always felt that whether you're a spiritual person or a practical person or a combination of the two, doing good things are like an investment. They increase the odds of good things happening to you. They don't guarantee that bad things aren't going to happen to you. But by doing good things, by being good people, by treating people well the way we want to be treated, you increase the odds of us all having a better life and being happier. So think of other people, you know, as well as yourself.
Right. And that's it is a hard thing, but it's something we talk about on this show quite a bit, you know, and I liked what you just said there. And it, you know, I've always thought kind of the same thing, whether you believe in a creation or a big bang, if you pull that thread far enough and really think about it long enough, it all stems from a singular source. So we are all connected in that way. We're all, even though it's hard to see time in, you know, billions of years and things like that, but we are all connected. And when we can look at each other and say, hey, I see me and you, you know, and I see you and me, and that's where we all stem from, that same place. And that's cool, man. I like that. I like that.
There's a pretty simple rule of thumb that I grew up in a big family. And the pretty simple rule of thumb is things that drive you apart are bad.
Right. I like that. Things that drive you apart are bad. Our neighbors to the north. Love you guys. Love you guys. But Ken, thank you again. I know I've said it many times. I'll probably say it many times more. Just for being here. We will keep our eyes open for you. You know, if you're going anywhere, we'll be spreading the word about you. And if you're coming anywhere near Michigan, you're going to find me. And I hope you're a hugger, because I'm a guy. I feel like that's something else we need more of in the world. We need to hug each other more and just be like,
I got hugs to spare, man. I got hugs to spare.
Human connection. Okay, so for the Horror Pop Extravaganza, this is Ken Kirzinger. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
You're very welcome. You take care until I see you again.
No! No! No!
Extravaganza.